the Hittite aspect of it, maybe that's what's missing. I'm starting to think.
Gathered all the Greeks. I mean, that is a very specific narrative, which is a story. And we can, obviously, the Greeks retold and reshaped that story over time. And we don't need to see a historical truth in that.
Can we say a story loosely based on a historical base from hundreds of years earlier?
But we can't prove it, right?
Yeah.
It's more like...
I mean, archaeology and textual is sources. I do think you can prove it quite confidently, sir. And just to tell you about something, here is something that you can't prove, okay? So everything we've mentioned so far, you can absolutely prove. But there is something that I sometimes like to present when it comes to this, that you cannot prove, but it's still intriguing. The Trojan horse. Ooh, let me tell you about that. Let me tell you about the Trojan horse. I'm going to put myself full screen for that one, though. So you know how within the Iliad, they mentioned the horse made of wood, then the soldiers got inside, the Trojans like it, take it in, and that's what allows the soldiers to break through regardless of the wall and the door, right? That they couldn't break through, they couldn't do it. What if I tell you that there is a different way to read it? And again, I can't prove it, but it is interesting. What if the horse, because you could be like, yeah, no, the horse didn't happen. I can agree with you, but what if the horse was symbolic? And when I say, what I mean by that is, there is evidence in Troy A, there is evidence that there was an earthquake. We know that this happened. The evidence is that it's archaeological in historical Troy. And it's possible that we know that this earthquake caused damage to the walls, and maybe because of this earthquake, the enemy forces that were sieging could enter Troy and took it. Why do I connect that to the horse? Why, like, if that's what happened, why would someone writing a text of whatever beautiful text that it is, the Iliad, why wouldn't they just say it was an earthquake? Why would they come up with the idea of the horse? Because the horse is one of the symbols of Poseidon, is strongly connected in classical antiquity with Poseidon. And Poseidon is the god of what? The sea and earthquakes. Now, am I reading too much into the text? I don't think so, because, again, I can't prove it. But think about it this way. To us, it's not obvious. It's not an obvious connection at all. For us, yeah, Poseidon is the god of the sea, that's it. But he is the god of the earthquake, and the horse is a symbol. To us, it might not be an obvious connection, but to people in ancient Greece, I think it would have been. And let me tell you this much. If I told you, if there is this story, I want to tell you about the story that happened, imagine. And I'm telling you, it happened in the Middle Ages, and maybe some medieval people, they converted the city, okay? What if I told you, and the lamb was what managed to... They created a lamb, and people saw this lamb, they opened the doors, and then everyone was converted. And then a dove flew over them as they were baptized into Christianity. Well, for anyone, even if you're not a Christian, the lamb is a reference to Jesus, and the dove is a reference to the Holy Ghost, and to us these are quite obvious. And I'm sure that I could find other elements, even with pop culture. And I could tell you something about the kryptonite, and you know immediately I'm talking about Superman, or I could tell you about Bat, and you know I'm talking about Batman. Well, for someone in classical antiquity, horse, earthquakes, and Neptune, Poseidon, Poseidonas was that obvious. And that's why I'm thinking maybe, because the earthquake actually did happen, and the earthquake is connected to the horse and Poseidon, maybe now this is something that I could present, and you could tell me you can't prove it, so maybe not. Cool. But all of the other archaeological stuff that we mentioned, and the mentionings in the discussion in the 28 texts that we find in the capital of the Hittite Empire, that is 100% archaeological proof. That is proof. They're both interesting, by the way. Just because something can't be proven, it doesn't mean that it's wrong a priori, but it also means, okay, but we need to be careful how much weight we give to something like this. It's interesting, but that's it. But then again, when it comes to all the rest, I think is not, the evidence is strong. The evidence is very strong.
Like, okay, there are plausible reasons to think that this may have some grounding in whatever, but there's no memory of it, right? And this is the important thing that we always stress, right? Whoever composed the poems, the figure we call Homer, didn't know there was a Bronze Age, right? There is no understanding of Mycenaean society or politics or this palatial culture, the material culture, he doesn't know it.
Are you sure? Would there be anything about the collapse of the Bronze Age and knowing that, from hundreds of years
that isn't the story, right? Like there's a city being destroyed and then everybody goes home, with the prize that they wanted. So unless you want to argue that this is a reflection of Mycenaean raiding culture, which is, possible.
Yes, there we go. At least I appreciate he said possible. I do think that that's exactly what it is.
obviously some kind of memory, but it's much more likely that they're describing something they recognize, because that's how you keep a story alive, right? You make it fit your contemporary
Okay,
understanding.
the only thing I'm willing to agree with the Ditchman in this case is that, yeah, they probably embellished. I'll grant him that. They definitely embellished.
So that's what we're looking at. It's a story about the early archaic period, which has some traces of an oral tradition that goes much further back. Sure, I mean, it has that.